Well, once again, I'm very excited because today we have the incredible Ken Seeley on the show. Ken is an interventionist and so much more than that. Obviously, I would say Ken is someone who doesn't really need an introduction, but his full will be in the show notes. Welcome to the Element Q podcast. I'm your host, TJ Woodward, and I'm thrilled to have you join us for this empowering journey. Each week, we shine a light on the authors, thought leaders, therapists, coaches, and healers of all types who are making a difference in the LGBTQ plus community. Together, we honor those who came before us, the courageous and resilient trailblazers who stood for our rights and recognition. Their strength laid the foundation we stand on today. Here, we celebrate their legacy by diving into the stories, insights, and tools that inspire gentleness, healing, and transformation. So get ready to be uplifted and empowered. This is the Element Q podcast. Ken, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. So good to see you.
So good to see you. It's been a minute. And of course, you're coming live with us here from beautiful Honolulu. And I love that you've been in Hawaii for many years now and having a hopefully somewhat of a relaxed life, although I know you're very, very busy as well.
Yeah, no, we're trying to keep busy, but not bring the busy to Hawaii, if that makes sense.
I love it. Yes, I love it. You know, my husband grew up on Oahu, so I have an obvious fondness for it. And I've only been to Hawaii twice, which is kind of wild since I've lived in California for 35 years. And I can't believe I've only been to Hawaii twice. So before the show started, you and I were just having a conversation about what was coming up for you around a deeper healing within LGBTQ plus. And you said a few things that I think are really important to kick off the conversation. And that is when we're seen as fundamentally wrong in some way, that has such an effect on us. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about that.
Yeah, I just remember, I mean, even when I came out personally, like, before I even know what coming out was, I'm this little boy that, that was very effeminate and didn't even know, anything about gay, straight, anything at all. And, my uncle would work in New York City and he would say, "Oh, the people down there are so sick. We walk through the village and there's guys dressed up as women." And, and it was like so shameful and so degrading. And it was like, "Ooh, you don't want to be like that because they're the bad people." So that message just kept coming in like, you know, gays are not normal. Gays are not, shouldn't be part of society. It's a choice. How dare they make that choice? And so all of that's coming in as a child without even knowing what's going on. Like I didn't even know my sexuality yet. I didn't know anything about it. And it creates this trauma, like this shameful trauma that is so intense that when you do get in touch with your sexuality or it starts to blossom, all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, I'm wrong. Religion tells me I'm wrong. God hates me. I'm going to hell anyway." So all of those emotions come up and it's like so shameful and so humiliating that you I covered it for many, many years. Like I did not want to address it. I didn't want to. I was like, "No, this isn't it. This is not what's wrong with me. There's something, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm fine." I'd get, Playboy magazines and look at women and, didn't understand why it didn't work. but but I
Oh,
tried.
that's right. I remember those moments. I remember those moments of like looking at like those magazines and trying to feel something that just wasn't there.
Yes, yes.
Having that like, oh no. And you know, it's so funny. I don't know if I've ever talked about this, but when you were speaking, I was remembering being in, I grew up in Indianapolis and it was downtown Indianapolis. So this is in the 70s at some point.
Yes.
I remember I was in a parking garage and I looked over and there was this rooftop party happening. It was all men. And I remember just kind of glancing and quickly assessing and figuring out, oh, this is a group of gay men. It was the first time I'd ever seen a group of gay men. And I'm guessing I was a young teenage, like a tween, right? And I'll never forget, this guy looked up and saw me and he had his arm around someone and he pulled it away. And I remember, even at that age,
Yep.
kind of sensing what shame is. And for some reason, he was ashamed for this kid to see him. And it had such
Yep.
a profound impact on me. And I don't know if I've even remembered that story for years.
Yeah, right. And I remember I was looking at magazines but when I looked at the Sears catalog with the men's underwear, oh, I was like, no, go away, that feeling, go away.
We might be similar age, Ken. So I don't know. I don't know what age you are, but I mean, I will tell you that the fashion in the 70s did not look,
Yes.
I mean, there was some, it was pretty provocative, the little
Yeah.
shorts the men wore then. So I was quickly figuring out my orientation, but there were a lot of layers, of course. But I want to lean into one thing that you said. And, one of the things that, I focus a lot on in my work is shame, and shame being
Mm,
one of the driving forces of addiction, whether LGBTQ or anyone.
yeah.
But it is true, I think, that what you're saying is like there's an extra helping, if you will, of shame when you're told
Mm,
there's something fundamentally wrong with who and
yeah.
what you are. And you added the religion piece, which I think, of course, is also like not only is, my uncle or the kids on the playground saying there's something wrong, but the idea that God is telling you something
Yes.
wrong. Wow, what does that create?
Right. And then I'm going to church. I grew up in Sunday school and I'm like, oh my God, God's, and then you try to hide it from God. Oh no, I don't want those feelings because God can't know those feelings. And, all of that trauma. It's like major trauma that is self-inflicted because of society, of what society is telling you what's right and what's wrong, and trying to navigate that at such a young age is just so devastating. Like I grew up in the 70s too, and that it was devastating back then. I remember my uncle ended up getting caught in bed with a man and his wife divorced him,
Yeah.
right? Like, and he's still in the closet, he still hasn't been out. But the point being is like back then, it was just starting to get a little bit accepted, but not like it is today where it's all on TV and it just feels like the norm. So that trauma that is just, I always look at it as like my brain was programmed as that child and it programmed into it where you're embarrassed, you're shameful, you're wrong, there's something bad about you. And that programming, it's never going away. There is no control alt delete in my brain. It's always going to be there the rest of my life. But now I have to take action on how to manage that programming and how do I live with it and not react to it and live into the fears of the which is kind of hard in today's world right now with everything that's going on. I mean, it's like we're going so far backwards where, are the gay rights going to be taken away again? They already took away the trans rights. So, what's next? The gay rights? And then, are we going to those camps too, because I'm gay? I'm so fearful of, those things that are happening in today's society.
Well, and I think you're speaking to something that's so important, and I want to take a deeper dive because, we've been around long enough to know that the pendulum politically does swing
Mhm.
back and forth,
Yeah.
right? But for someone who's younger, this might be the first time they're feeling that swing to the
Yes.
right, if you will. And it does bring up a lot. And if we have, unresolved trauma from the past and we're carrying shame, an event can happen. And I want to be really clear, the events are happening. We don't want to negate that they're happening,
Yeah.
but my response or my reaction to the event might even be bigger than the event itself, right? And
Yes.
then we see social media and then people posting things and we don't even know what's true or what isn't, but
Yeah.
people are really activated in this heightened sense of survival. And you said something that I think is really important to kind of go more deeply into, and that is the control alt delete. I don't ever actually get rid of that, but I learn to work with it in a different
Yes.
way. But what's
Yes.
important with this, and I think this is the deeper work for us in the work that we do with addiction, with mental health, with behavioral health,
Yeah.
is that those programs came in before our brain was even developed. So it's
Hmm.
not a logical process because
Yeah.
I can logically say, oh, yeah, the shame I experienced wasn't mine. And that was
Mhm.
like all this stuff that was someone else's and it was their own trauma. But I absorbed that. So
Yes.
when I'm in reactivity, right? And
Yeah.
so we've heard this a lot. If it's hysterical, it's historical. So if I'm having a big response, it
Yeah.
is what's happening, but it's also more more than what's happening.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a big question and we can have a conversation about this, but how do we start to work with the programming in a different way? Because I wanted to get rid of it. I wanted to just like not have the
Oh,
experience anymore, but then I realized, oh, I'm going to have to learn to work with this and walk with this.
yes. And you're exactly right. I don't think there's ever getting rid of it. It's always going to be there. And I think the more aware of it that I am, the easier it is to understand it and see the reaction instead of the response. And if I feel the reaction is starting to percolate and I'm feeling the energies, I could take a breath and and it's not all the time. I mean, I'm still working, I just got 36 years sober last week and my sponsor, there's four of us that get together every Wednesday and we do like a process group. I don't know if you know Nancy Sobel, but she's, I think you probably know her from LA. But we get together every week and we look for our blind spots. I'm like, I don't want a cheerleader to, cheer me on and say, "Oh, Ken, you did a great job." I was like, I want somebody that's going to be tough and show me the blind spots where I could be hurting people because those reactive behaviors end up hurting people that you love. And it's not because I want to do it, it's because it's a reactive behavior from that trauma. I protected myself as that little boy for so many years with that wall around me, that wall and those protections are all around me that, I might, blow up at somebody because that's a easy way to keep them afar, and but I'm hurting somebody that I love because of it. So I think it's really important to know that it's a life experience. Like I have to work on this the rest of my life.
Yes, and I love what you're saying because I notice you use the word awareness, and I always say there are three steps to it: awareness, awareness, and awareness.
Yeah.
Like I'm aware that I'm doing it, but even that awareness, there's another level of awareness because then it's
Mhm.
like, oh, this is sort of my automatic response, right, to what
Yep.
we would call a trigger, even though I don't love
Yep.
that word. I use the word activation because it's not really what the person's doing, it's the wound that's getting touched. And
Yes.
you didn't quite say this, but I think you did in a way. It's like it's an automatic response until I'm
Yep.
aware of it. And if I can create some space between that point of activation and then that
Yes.
automatic response, because the key to me is to actually feel what I'm feeling instead of project it to like this person shouldn't have said or done that, right?
Yep.
Of course, we can debate like things happening in the world should or shouldn't be happening, but like how much control do I have over that? But I
Yep.
can change what's happening here.
Yep.
There are a lot of layers because if I think about the community as a whole, I do see a lot of reactivity and I
Yep.
understand it. And the deeper question is how do we individually and collectively heal it?
Yeah. And I always for many, many years I lived in, the 5% of negativity in my life. Like there's, this 5% of things that's everyday life, right? We all have them. There's stressors. There's, how do I get the bills paid? How do I get out there and find a new job? How do I, all those, where am I going to live? All those stressors that come in to every single human being out there. I'm not alone in those stressors. It's just life. We all get them. And as I'm going through them, I would take that 5% and I would make it 95%. And I had an awareness and I was like, but wait a minute, I live in Hawaii. Some people don't even, this is on a bucket list that they never even make. Like my aunt always says, I seen Hawaii in Hawaii 5-0. And now she's blind and she's like, I wish I would have seen it, but she never got here. But the point being is like, I have an incredible life. Like, I mean, there's I'm in a relationship for over 20 years. I mean, things are going really well. And now I'm looking at that's the 95% of my life, not the 5%, so I could put it in back into the 5%, but I don't have to go and live in, turn the 5% into, does that make sense? Into the 95.
Oh, absolutely. And what you're speaking to me is like the ability to realize perspective. But when I
Yes.
was in my automatic trauma response, and this is
Yeah.
a very nuanced conversation because I will say something like, we're always choosing, we're either choosing consciously or unconsciously. So happiness is a choice. But if I
Yeah.
don't know that, my trauma or my shame is choosing the unhappiness, or it's
Yes.
focusing on that one, early recovery 101 stuff, like, 100
Yeah.
people can say how wonderful I am, but one person has a judgment, and which one do I focus on, right?
Yeah.
So that's like that early recovery thing, but it
Yeah.
really continues to apply. Like, how am I viewing my life? Am I
Yeah.
viewing through this lens of the part of me that doesn't feel healed? Or can I realize that if I continue to be unconscious, I'm going to be reactive? And
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with that, but what does
Yeah.
it create? Do I want
Yeah.
a life filled with more love, peace, and connection? The answer is yes. Now, I don't think I ever would have said to you, Ken, at 18 months sober or something like, no, I want a life filled with misery and frustration.
Yeah.
But unconsciously, I still did
Yes.
that because I kept replicating it over and over and over again. And the deeper work for me was actually going back and
Yes.
healing from that younger place. And, in my story, I shut down when I was 7, and that wall that went around my heart later became an automatic strategy of kind of keeping people away, like
Yes.
not choosing people who could really love me. I would go for
Yeah.
the straight guys one after the other because they couldn't possibly love me.
Yeah.
And then, why is this happening to me? You know,
Yes.
5, 6, 7 years in sobriety, and then I'm like, okay, stop that behavior. But I
Yep.
still had the pull until I
Yes.
did the deeper healing.
Yeah. And when I did it was the reason why I was in the 95% negative, like I remember like the things that happened growing up. Like you said, you shut down at 7. I think that's around how old I was because I learned to be invisible. Because if I was invisible and not seen or heard, then I wouldn't get bullied. I wouldn't get beat up. And so I would just have to get into a crowd. I would be petrified of getting into a crowd. But like getting on the school bus, either going home or going to school, either way, like in New York where I grew up, they would take your hat, your winter hat, and they throw it around the bus and they'd all laugh. And if you cried, they'd even laugh harder. So it was just so I would be petrified the whole day in school. And then the days that we had gym class and we were nowhere going to play softball or something. And I knew I was always one because I couldn't hit a ball. Hello, I couldn't even, and if I catch a ball and it comes towards me, I'm like running from it. Like, and then if I try to get it, I step on it and twist my ankle. So they're like, we don't want him on our team. So, so I would always be the last one to be picked and I'd be soaking wet in sweat from just scared to death. So all day long, I would think about, oh my God, I got to go to gym. I got to go to gym. This is going to happen. Oh my God, kids were mean on the way to school. That means they're going to be mean on the way home from school. So my whole day was just compounded on fear and anxiety of what's going to happen. And that's where I learned my brain was programmed to live in that 95% of fear and anxiety. So I'm just grateful, like, I had this opportunity because we see it with all of our clients, right? I love this because, and I love the work that you do because you know that it's not about us stopping. Like I always say, I could only bring a client as far as I'm willing to go and or a sponsee, right? If I'm not willing to do the trauma work, if I'm not willing to get in there and still with all these years sober, meeting once a week with my sponsor and sponsees and doing the work, and I'm still in therapy. My mom passed away last year, so I went back to therapy. So if I'm not willing to do that work, I can't bring another client or somebody that far. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, you're singing my song, as you know. I like to be provocative and say, really, the
Yeah.
only thing I need to do for my clients is my own healing, because in the
Mhm.
end, I'm going to unconsciously stop them, just as you said so
Yeah.
eloquently. I'm going to stop them as far as I've gone, and it won't even necessarily be conscious or obvious, but
Yes.
I see people falling back on like, oh, well, we don't need to do that deeper trauma work right now, and I'm always curious, is that because I'm uncomfortable with that?
Yes.
Obviously, there are times that clients aren't ready to do their trauma work, but most often, I
Yeah.
would say it's that the clinician or the facilitator or the
Yeah.
counselor maybe is uncomfortable or hasn't done enough of their own. And for me, that's really the deeper work because
Mhm.
ultimately, there's no finish line.
Yeah.
There's no I'm healed now, but I have to be far enough in my own healing. And like you, like I just celebrated 39 years sober recently. And, like we have a life of recovery,
Yes.
a life. And, I won't speak for you, Kim, but I'll speak for myself. I got sober young, so a lot of my growing up stuff actually happened in sobriety. So I didn't
Mhm.
even have the excuse of drugs and alcohol. But nonetheless, my 20s was really filled with trying to change the world so I could be happy. And then the deeper work,
Yeah.
30s, I was just all about being fabulous. But
Yeah.
really, the deeper work was when I hit 40 and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I've been kind of doing my thing, my fabulosity, and I'm gonna kind of lean into that because I see that a lot with gay men. We like
Yeah.
want to look good. We want to say
Yeah.
everything's fine here. I want to dress a certain way. I want to get my body a certain way. And although that's not always a response to shame, I think it often is.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I remember like years ago, you remember John Southworth, right? The interventionist from many years ago that passed away in 2017. But I remember he was in his 70s and he had like 40 years sobriety. And I was like, John, I'm going to do this trauma workshop. And he's like, oh, no, I did all my trauma work. I was like, just go to one with me because it was five of them that you had to do within 12 months. And I said, just go to one of them with me to get certified. And so he was like, oh, okay, I'll go. So he drags his feet and goes. And at the end of it, he's like, oh my God, I signed up for the other four. He's like, and he goes, we never, ever, ever stop learning until we die.
Yeah.
And that was just such a powerful message for me. And this doctor, like an addictionologist in London, I was in a conference there many years ago. And he, was very well known in the industry and, treated a lot of patients of addiction medicine. And he goes, I always wanted to be a musician. So at 80 years old, he went back to school to learn music. So, and he goes, I want to be a famous composer. I don't want to just be a musician. And I was like, here it is at 80 years old, he's still wanting to learn. And I think if we could teach our our clients, our sponsees, the people in our lives, like that's what life is all about. It's we all have pain and how do we work through it together?
That's
And
right. Who else I'm thinking of is Dr. David E. Smith, up in San Francisco. He was the
Mhm.
founder of Haight-Ashbury Free Clinic. He is the most humble person. He is still working. He's still medical director of a lot of programs. And he has come to my trainings. He's like, I just want to learn more. And I'm like, first of all, the humility that he has to be in anyone's training, to want to learn more is just such a beautiful thing to observe. But I also think that keeps him and
yeah,
us young and alive and vibrant, right? If I'm like in a place where like I already know everything, like
yeah,
how do I continue to grow and thrive? And like for me, like, and it's again, recovery 101, remain teachable. Well, what does
yeah,
it mean? That means obviously I don't know everything, or
yeah,
there's always something more to know. And I think that's
yeah,
a more positive way to frame it, even though my mind may say, I've done that work. I mean, I can't tell you, when I went back to school when I was 40 after like things started to unravel and I had the calling to do this work when I went from one career into behavioral health right around 40, right around 20 years sober. I was in the fetal position at the end of this
Mhm.
week-long intensive, really getting much deeper into the like I thought I healed the internalized homophobia and the person who was running the intensive all he had to say is something like, "What is it like for you being in San Francisco now and seeing all those men holding hands and in love and you feeling like you don't deserve it?" It was just this moment.
Wow.
I was like, my mind was like, "Oh, I know I deserve love." But my little kid
Yes.
came forward and was like, I just let that little kid cry and get it out. And
Yes.
I was startled by the
Yep.
depth of that work, but there was a lot of freedom on the other side.
Yeah, I love that, right? That little kid, it's still that tape playing that we're not worthy. We're not, society told us what we were worth, and no matter how much work we do, it doesn't go away. It just needs continuous work. It just needs continuous love and nurturing and taking care of that. I remember that was one of the other things John would be like, you got to take care of that little boy inside. And I'd be like, I was like, did you take your meds today? Because what do you mean a little boy inside? You're 70 something years old and there ain't no little boy. But when I really got that and I understood it, that little 7-year-old that you talked about shutting down, if our number one job, every human being's number one job in the world out here is to nurture their little child within and show they're the only one that could give them the full love that that little kid deserves and needs. They're the only one. No one else could do it. You could try to fill it with money. You could try to fill it with, you know, relationships. You could try to fill it with, oh, if this perfect relationship works out for me, then that means they fulfilled it for me. And that's the glass, well, that's a glass empty, not half empty. That's completely empty trying to get another person to fulfill my needs. But if you come to it and you fulfill your needs, those are the gifts of life. That's when we get to the next dimension. And that's really what it's all about is how do we teach people to take care of that injured, tortured little child that's inside that needs that nurturing and love.
Yeah, and the greatest thing about that is even though we've said there's no finish line, and even though
Yep.
we've said, it's always going to be there,
Yep.
the key is my relationship to it changes, and that changes
Yes.
everything. So I used to hear people say, "Well, we're going to continue to work on this the rest of our lives." I'm like, "Oh, I'm always going to be living with this much shame. I'm always going to be living."
No, no.
No, not at all. I'm going to have a very different relationship, but at some point, I realized that no amount of sex, shopping, food, relationship,
Yes.
achievement, great
Yep.
clothes, a new car, none of that
Yep.
is actually going to heal this. There was a shift in how I
Yep.
related not only to the younger self, where I allowed that younger self to feel, but also, I started to tap into more of an awareness of like, how can I be of service? And maybe as we're
Mm.
kind of moving toward the end of our conversation, I know you've helped a lot of people, and you and I have both signed up to help
Yeah.
people, and
Yeah.
it's such a gift. But I'm
Yes.
coming from, I don't know about you, but I'll speak for myself. It's not like this altruistic thing, like, oh, I just want to help everyone. No, it's like, oh my gosh, I I never
Mm.
ever thought I'd be in a place where I could have this much love for the wounds, this much
Yep.
love, and this much transformation. And I feel
Yep.
like it is like my honor to share it with
Yes.
the world now. Not that I have to, not that I need to save
Yep.
lives, but that it is truly my honor to share what was given to me and to
Yeah.
as many people as possible.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. Like and then you look at, as you continue to grow, you look at the pain of the bullying and the isolation as more of a gift. Like there's a saying that God only gives you as much as you could handle. Like it was so intense. Like you said, when you rolled up in a ball at 10 years sober, I bought a gun to commit suicide. I was in so much pain. And so we get into so much pain and fear and just no light at the end of the tunnel. But that is a gift because that gave me the empathy to really connect with other people to say, I know I lived in that pain. I know that pain. I could still live in that pain tomorrow. And I want to help you get out of that. And that kind of empathy, that's what I see you doing in your work. I see you having that empathy for people that are in that darkness and gently, lovingly bringing them out of it to see a little glimpse of light until they could start loving themselves.
Oh, Ken, thank you. That's the greatest compliment ever. And I'm gonna just take that in and say thank
Good,
you. And
good.
I was as you were talking, I was thinking about even the most extreme parts of my story, the sexual trauma, the
Mhm.
abandonment, the things I thought I wanted to be rid of or I was too ashamed to talk about.
Yep.
Those are the very things that have made me uniquely available, not because of the pain only, but also
Mhm.
because of the transformation of that pain, or because I
Yes.
have a different way of working with it
Yep.
through mentorship, through spiritual practice, through recovery tools. And that is my greatest gift. And
Yes.
honestly, it is the thing that makes me feel the most alive and I know
Yes.
we all know this, right? When I can see the light, even if it's just a little bit of light come on in
Yes.
someone's eyes, that feeds me in such a beautiful way. So, I mean, I just, I appreciate that very much. Is there anything else in the last few minutes of our conversation that we haven't covered that you'd like to share, or is there anything that's, in your mind, on your heart that wants to be brought into the conversation as we start to come to the close?
I just, I just feel so blessed as you do, like that we get to do this work and we get to there's no better feeling, like you said, with that light coming on in someone's light. I used to be an ecstasy dealer, right? I used to love taking ecstasy constantly just to get that feeling of love and just connecting with other human beings and you that doesn't even you know, touch the feeling that you get when somebody changes like that kind of gift. And I hope that my prayer is like everybody gets that available to them in this lifetime because you can't get a better high. You can't get a better reward. No money there's nothing that could touch that feeling. I remember once that when I first got sober, I used to do, back in LA, APLA, they had caring for babies for AIDS. And then they had, because back then it was everybody was dying in the late 80s. I got sober in 1989. So everybody, and so I went to this hospital and this guy was like he was days away from dying and shivering but sweating, and I'm putting a wet towel on his head and I'm putting a blanket on him and I'm like, is there anything else you need? And back then the families would come with balloons and everything when they first got sick, and then after they'd been there for a while there would be nobody visiting, so I just volunteered and went to room to room to room. And this guy, I guess he came out of it and he called a friend of mine that was in recovery and he goes, I thought I died and went to heaven. This guy came and helped me, last night. And I thought that was my angel taking me to heaven. And my friend called me up and he said, did you volunteer yesterday? And I said, how would you know? I was like, I didn't tell people when I volunteered. And he goes, my friend told me that this happened. And I still remember that from 35 years, 30 years ago, whatever that was. And there's no better high than that. Money can't buy that, you
That's right.
know, and that's a gift from recovery. That's a gift from you doing the work that you're doing. So keep up the good work because you're saving lives.
Thank you, Ken, as are you. And your story literally brought tears to my eyes because I thought, first of all, we'll have to have a conversation about ecstasy because I was literally at the birthplace of ecstasy in 1984 and 85, but that's another conversation.
Well,
But
I
like,
wish I knew you then.
it's also no surprise that we both have that uh, as at least one of our drugs of choice because of that euphoric experience, and then
Yes.
chasing that externally. And I think I will say for myself, not only when I was drinking and using, but in recovery as well. And then coming to, there is nothing greater than that moment of being the angel for someone, not because I want to be, look how great I am, but because, oh my
No.
gosh, that is the most beautiful experience of what it is to be human. And when I tap
Yes.
into that, I'm like, as cliche as it sounds, that's better
Yes.
than any drug I've ever done. And that is for sure.
Yes, yes, yes. That is why I believe we're here to live on this earth.
That's right.
That's it. It's that simple. It isn't what I accomplish. It isn't what I got. It isn't any of those things. It's how do I create those situations for other people so they could have that experience.
Well, I can't think of a better way to end this conversation than that. So I just want to end with gratitude. Thank you, Ken, for who you are and what you do in the world. And for everyone watching or listening right now, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, share. And if there's someone in particular that you think would benefit from this conversation, please share it with them because that really is the intention of this podcast. So thank you, Ken Seeley. You're
Thank
amazing. I
you.
appreciate you. Peace and blessings, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Element Q podcast. It's an honor to walk this path of healing and transformation with you. Remember, the courage and resilience of those who came before us live on in each of us. Let's continue to carry their legacy forward as we support one another in creating a world filled with love, gentleness, and empowerment. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast with someone who needs to hear it. Together, we're building a brighter future, one story at a time. Until next time, I'm TJ Woodward, and this has been the Element Q podcast.